Hey, everybody. Jimmy Smith with my pre-fight breakdown, this time for the UFC Fight Night, Derek Lewis versus Alexei Oleinik. It's going to be an interesting one, man. Certainly the winner of the main event slides up into contender status. Both guys, of course, Derek Lewis already fought for a title, but Alexei Oleinik could get there. Heavyweight division is kind of wide open right now. Other than that, there's some veteran names on this card that could really move up with a win, especially an emphatic one. Let's start at the bottom. Beneil Dariush versus Scott Holtzman. Beneil Dariush, incredibly consistent, is a great way to put him. He's won 4 in a row. He hasn't had that breakout performance against great talent, and this is not going to be that opportunity. Scott Holtzman, 14-3. A good fighter, but 36, 37 years old, had a win over Jim Miller. That's great. He got into the sport late. He was initially a hockey guy. He has real natural power and size. He can knock you out with either hand. He's got good power. But Beneil Dariush, the thing about this for me is, A, great grappler, fantastic jiu-jitsu, good takedown. The thing about Holtzman is, with kind of getting into this late, he doesn't have the well-roundedness of a lot of people who came up in martial arts or came up in MMA. He's one of those late evolutions of somebody who was great at a particular sport and then changed over to MMA. You don't often see that in his weight class. A lot of heavyweights do that. Obviously, Greg Hardy, football player, and then got into MMA, but heavyweights don't have to do as much as lighter weights. So the thing about Holtzman is he has those natural abilities, that natural athleticism, but his well-roundedness isn't there. His technique isn't there in every aspect of the game. What I think Beneil Dariush will do with his experience is go for the takedown, go for the takedown, go for the takedown, and make it about his submission game. Dude has an excellent submission game. First time Beneil Dariush got on my radar, he went toe-to-toe with Kron Gracie, I think at ADCC qualifiers a few years back when he was a brown belt and Kron was a black belt, and it was a war. And this is when Kron was smoking everybody. And I was like, man, who's this guy? And it was Beneil Dariush. So great ground game. I think he gets it done on the ground again. And we see a submission. I don't think he'll be in the first round because he's facing a guy who's very, very tough, physical, big for the weight class. I think it's a slow burn kind of fight. I would say a third-round submission for Beneil Dariush. And he keeps doing what he's doing until he takes on that elite contender-level guy, and then we'll see what he can do. So I'd say Beneil Dariush by submission, probably third round. Yulia Stoliorenko versus Yana Kunitskaya, 2 fun names. I called Stoliorenko's last fight in Invicta. It was a Phoenix Rising card, and I do play-by-play for those. And I think I did play-by-play for that one. And the bloodiest fight I did do it because Megan Anderson was my broadcast partner. Bloodiest fight I've ever seen in women's mixed martial arts. An absolute bloodbath. It was unbelievable. She won a split decision with the open scoring. She's an armbar specialist. That's what she's great. She'll fly for him. She'll get him from all kinds of different positions. She's never won by knockout. What impressed me was she hit Lisa Verzosa with power punches from everywhere, cut her up. She was bruised. She was bleeding. She kept coming forward and wanting to scrap. So it showed a lot of heart, and it shows Stoliorenko can rely on her power punching when things don't go well with the grappling. Yana Kunitskaya, if you remember, her debut was against Cyborg. I was on the desk at Fox for that fight, and Cyborg did what Cyborg does, beat her from pillar to post. Really not ready for 145 pounds. She's actually 135 pounder, so back down at her normal weight class. She's been okay in the UFC. She stayed up there, coming off a loss to Aspen Ladd. 2-2 in the UFC, but one of those, once again, against Cyborg. So she's done well. Both her wins by decision. She's taller. She's rangier. She's more experienced against elite fighters. And she's a huge favorite in this. Almost 3-1. I think 2.5-1. I'm going with the upset. Maybe it's because I called her fight, and maybe I'm a little emotionally wrapped up in this one. But Stoliorenko, I think, has the skills to stand and bang with Kunitskaya and at least keep her back to the point where Kunitskaya is not going to have her way with her on the feet, although she is more versatile. And she has a ton of armbar finishes, so I don't think Kunitskaya's takedown, going to the ground, which is usually what she does in the pocket when things aren't going her way, I don't think she's going to want to do that. So Stoliorenko, although she doesn't have any knockouts, I was impressed with her power punching before. I think that might be a factor in this fight. I got to go with Stoliorenko probably by decision because that's how most fights end at 135 in women's MMA. Stoliorenko by decision over Kunitskaya. It's a bit of an upset, but that's where I'm going. Darren Stewart, Maki Pitolo. I'm going to be honest about the fact that I literally just finished interviewing Darren Stewart for ESPN International. Great guy, a lot of fun, great talking to him. This was a guy, and you rarely see this, had 4 fights in the UFC, draw, loss, and then got a win. Usually you're gone after 4 fights without a win. Didn't get his first UFC win until his 5th fight in there. After that, 4 and 5, 4 wins out of 5 fights in the octagon. So he really kind of righted the ship there. What does he bring? He does bring good power. He is strong, has a lot of faith in that power, has a little trouble with his pacing, but he tends to wear fighters out a little bit. You know, fighters tend to slug it out with him, and then he wears them down. In this instance, the thing about Maki Pitolo, who came up from 170 pounds, if you look at his last fight, sweet combinations. Sweet. And I like that against Charles Byrd. Worked the body, worked the head, good flow, good accuracy, footwork while he was throwing. I really like his technique. The question is he going to get into the stand and bang Hawaiian kind of fight against a guy I think is naturally bigger and naturally a little bit more powerful? He has better technique. Will he get in a position to use it late in the fight? That's the interesting thing here. I will not lie. I think I'm influenced because I just finished talking to him, and I liked him a lot. But I do think physically his power will come into play in this fight. Darren Stewart is not the most versatile fighter in the world, and I think he will kind of lure the Hawaiian into the typical stand and bang kind of trade. And Pitolo, although smoother and more accurate, gets drawn into a firefight at the right time. I got to go with Darren Stewart. Knockout, let's say 2nd round. Omari Akhmedov versus Chris Weidman. This is a really tough one that I don't want to pick. And I'll tell you why. It's because I really like Chris Weidman. Former champion, all he's done for the sport, been at a high level for a long time. If you're picking against Chris Weidman in this fight, you're basically saying Chris Weidman is shot. That's what you're saying. Under normal circumstances, a few years ago, I think he beats Akhmedov. I don't think it's that close. He's more skilled. His wrestling is certainly in his back pocket. Nice striker as well with good power. I don't see Akhmedov having much for Chris Weidman a few years ago. The Reyes fight, that wasn't the hardest punch in the world that dropped Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman was moving up to 205. There's a power disparity there. But it was mostly, it gave me that indication the guy just can't take a shot anymore. Against Jacare, now Jacare can put power behind a punch, was staggered late. He was really tired. He was walking back. He was just hanging on those last few minutes when Jacare knocked him out in a fight that he was winning. I'm just seeing those things where, his gas is letting him down late in fights, which it never used to do, and his ability to walk through when he needs to walk through power punches when he has to, isn't there anymore. And Akhmedov, he hasn't lost since 2016. That was at 170. Up at 185, he's been good. 5 wins, 1 draw. Just coming off a decision over Ian Heinisch. He's fought a lot of mid-level talent and done well against it, all by decision on this win streak. If Chris Weidman can't get his grappling going early and can't make it one of those top-heavy, great submission game that no one talks about, if he can't get those tools going early, I think he's going to lose his fight. I think he has the skills to win if he can stick with them, but Akhmedov has decent power. He's a good kickboxer. He knows how to put power behind a punch. Good kicks as well. He might be able to chop Weidman down a bit. I just don't see Weidman getting through 15 minutes of this fight with his chin being in the shape it is. I would like to see him do it. I'd like to see him out-wrestle him and get, maybe one more big fight at 185, but it's going to have to be on the ground. He cannot stand up anymore. Now, does he have the confidence to really commit to the takedown these days? We haven't seen it in his last few fights. So I hate to say it. I am kind of betting that Chris Weidman just isn't the fighter he used to be and that this is kind of his swan song. I hate to say it. And part of me would love to see him pull this one off. Big part of me would love to see him pull this one off. But I got to go with Akhmedov in this one. I would say a late stoppage again, maybe 3rd round. Derek Lewis versus Alexei Oleinik. All these are hard to pick, by the way. There are almost none where I'm totally confident in what I'm saying. I can lay out the nuts and bolts, but there are a lot of very even fights on this one. Derek Lewis, Alexei Oleinik. Alexei Oleinik is one of those anomalies in the heavyweight division that he's a great submission artist without great wrestling. He doesn't have a great takedown. That's part of the reason I think he goes for the Ezekiel choke all the time. A lot of funky finishes and weird stuff is because he doesn't have the standard DC type takedown. He doesn't have the standard Brock Lesnar high-level wrestler kind of takedown. He doesn't have that. So he ends up in these weird half-guard positions where he sweeps guys and ends up in this funky, got an Ezekiel choke while he was mounted, which is insane. Stuff like that is born partly in the fact he doesn't have a positional style. He rarely gets in great position to finish guys. He does it from wherever he happens to be. Derek Lewis, big for the weight class, very strong, knockout puncher. And what's weird with his build is he wears fighters down. Fighters get in, try to take him down. They wear themselves out. He gets out of the submissions. He fights the takedown, does what he has to do, and they end up running out of gas, and his power punching takes over. We saw it against Blagoy Ivanov, similar to Alexei Oleinik in that he has kind of a funky submission style. He couldn't keep up with Derek Lewis in a long fight. Had some success early, and then Lewis always finds a funky way to get back to his feet. You lean against him, you try and take him down, you're pummeling, and by the third round, your arms are done, and he takes over. I see that happening with Alexei Oleinik. Just I like Alexei a lot. I was able to train with him a little bit in Holland, and I love his submission game, but he doesn't have the wrestling to go with it, and I think that inefficiency hurts him late. I got to go with Derek Lewis, late stoppage, second or third round, because Alexei Oleinik in recent fights has had trouble with his gas. Looked good against Verdum, but he was able to kind of outstrike Verdum, which I don't think he wants to do against Lewis. And Verdum looked awkward and didn't seem to have a lot of confidence in striking in that fight. Couldn't get his takedown going. And Verdum did do well in that third round, showing once again Oleinik has trouble with his gas late in fights. And I think that really bites him in this fight. I got to go Derek Lewis by late stoppage. All right, appreciate you. And I'll be back afterward to go over what I got wrong. Hopefully I do better than I did last week. Later.